Illness and death are perhaps the only things that a tyrant has in common with his subjects. In this sense alone, a nation profits from being run by an old man. It's not that one's awareness of one's own mortality necessarily enlightens or makes one mellow, but the time spent by a tyrant pondering, say, his metabolism is time stolen from the affairs of state. Both domestic and international tranquillities are in direct proportion to the number of maladies besetting your first secretary of the party or your president for life. Welcome to Positive Read-Ins. Please support this channel and check out new literature by getting your copy of Commuting. You can link to it in the description. You can also link to the Gymnasia website where you can get the short story collection Comorbidities and the novel Non-Local. Thank you. The beginning reading was from On Tyranny, a mid-length essay by Joseph Brodsky. It's in this collection, Less Than One. On Tyranny was published in 1980. Most of Brodsky's essays are memoirs or literary analyses of poetry. This one is a third category, which you could call maybe a philosophical essay, an exploration of a concept, in this case, tyranny, and trying to build a foundation of it. What is tyranny? Where does it come from? Like Brodsky's other essays, we do have some characteristic, maybe Brodskyan wit, if you want to call it. Part of that is seen right at the beginning when he says that if you're going to have a tyrant, it's best that that tyrant is an old man because they're going to be concerned with their metabolism and stuff like that. And the older they are and the more maladies they have, the more tranquility you'll have because they won't be fussing in your business. So it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but perhaps truth to it as well. The argument of this essay, though, is at first one might read this thinking it's a critique specifically of Russia and kind of the usual suspects in Western media. However, the argument is actually a bit more broad and maybe darker. And what that argument is that tyranny actually comes from the destruction of the individual, which is a product of modernity, a product of specifically a demographic problem, a product of overpopulation, which leads to a need to rein in the chaos. And by doing that, we have a depersonalization that takes place. We have a lack of the individual, and we all just become kind of mediocre and anonymous. So that's the argument he's really putting forth here. And I'll start by looking at this metaphor he presents for politics. He says here, the stability of the pyramid. So the pyramid is this, that's the metaphor for politics he's using. The stability of the pyramid seldom depends on its pinnacle, and yet it is precisely the pinnacle that attracts our attention. So the pinnacle is the tyrant, the leader, and he's saying that's where we're all looking, but that's not really what's essential for the stability of this structure. After a while, the spectator's eye gets bored with its intolerable geometrical perfection and all but demands changes. When changes come, however, they are always for the worse. To say the least, an old man fighting to avoid disgrace and discomfort, which are particularly unpleasant at his age, is quite predictable. Bloody and nasty as he may appear to be, in that fight it affects neither the pyramid's inner structure nor its external shadow. and the objects of his struggle, the rivals, fully deserve his vicious treatment, if only because of the tautology of their ambition in view of the difference in age. For politics is but geometrical purity embracing the law of the jungle. So there's a few things to discuss here. First one, that last kind of definition of politics, it's geometrical purity embracing the law of the jungle. And I think really what he means by this is just that the world without politics is chaotic. The strongest and the smartest make it to the top. They get the most power. And politics is trying to take that system, that lack of a system, that just kind of wildness, and put it into a manageable system, kind of rein in the chaos. And that's the pyramid that is created. And he says here, though, the inner structure and the external shadow are not really affected by whoever's on top. And I think that's a reference to just kind of the bureaucrats that make up, that would be the inner pyramid, what today might be called deep state, or kind of this bureaucratic state that it doesn't matter who is in charge. I'm speaking in the U.S. context. It's the same. You get a lot of the same characters throughout different administrations. And the shadow, the external shadow, I think is how we, the common people, see politics. So none of that's really going to matter when we replace the person on the top. And again, I don't think he was speaking about America when he wrote this, but I think his ideas are certainly applicable to America. He goes on to kind of clarify that how does this happen, this destruction of the individual. And he says here, today, every new socio-political setup, be it a democracy or an authoritarian regime, is a further departure from the spirit of individualism toward the stampede of the masses. So no matter what political form you get, you're going to get a move away from the individual, and you're going to get a move towards the masses. He called it a stampede of the masses. So you're getting run over by all these people. The idea of one's existential uniqueness gets replaced by that of one's anonymity. An individual perishes not so much by the sword as by the penis. And however small a country is, it requires or becomes subjected to central planning. This sort of thing easily breeds various forms of autocracy, where tyrants themselves can be regarded as obsolete versions of computers. That line there, the individual perishes not so much by the sword, but by the penis. So we're not losing our individuality by force. We're losing it by the abundance. Again, the demographic issue, the overpopulation that's kind of swamping us, where we have no individuality anymore. Reading this, I recall an argument that Friedrich Nietzsche made, I believe, in this anti-education, where he talks about how one of his critiques of education, the problem at the time which sounds like a real elitist argument, but the fact that there was too many people being educated. So when you try to educate so many people, it becomes depersonalized, it becomes kind of standardized, and in Nietzsche's perspective, it becomes weak. And so he was railing against this. This is his first book. I don't even think it was published as a book in his lifetime. It was just a collection of lectures that he gave. Developing this idea a little bit more about the tyrant, he says, Brodsky says, if a man has a vocation to be a tyrant, he usually takes a shortcut and becomes a family tyrant. So again, that's, I think, kind of that witticism from Brodsky again. Whereas real tyrants are known to be shy and not terribly interested in family men, the vehicle of a tyranny is a political party. And I think that's a strong idea here, that It's the political party itself. He talks about how these men move into this kind of a world already occupied by skyscrapers and mountains. Really, I think these are just metaphors for kind of great things that have already been created, and they have to kind of wait their turn to get there, or by creating a political party, that's this thing that they can, almost like an imaginary structure that they can move to the top of. And that's really what's going to produce these tyrants. And again, this is something that's needed because you've got so many people. We need some kind of system, some kind of way to structure people's lives. And the politics is gonna do that. That's the pyramid, and the parties are gonna help further this. And you just get a number of tyrants following them. He says later in this that, come to think of it, the party's replacement of the leader, of the tyrant, is the closest thing we've got to resurrection. Because again, they're just the same people built by the same system. And what are these people like? He says down here that the droning dullness of a party program and the drab, unspectacular appearance of its leaders appeal to the masses as their own reflection. In the era of overpopulation, evil as well as good becomes as mediocre as its subjects. To become a tyrant, one has better be dull. And I thought that was another quite interesting point, that in the age of overpopulation, we don't have people committing great acts of goodness, nor great acts of evil. It's all mediocrity. So this is, again, a meditation on tyranny, but it's also a criticism of kind of modernity and modern times, and trying to bring order to the masses of people. And his argument is this naturally is going to move away from the individual and move into tyranny. Another part here to look at, maybe getting a final part. So developing this idea of the depersonalization that comes about. So he's saying that the goal of these parties, besides all these members wanting to become, at the top, become the ultimate ruler. So the goal is to accommodate their numerical expansion in the non-expanding world. And the only way to achieve it is through the depersonalization and bureaucratization of everybody alive. For life itself is a common denominator. That's enough of a premise for structuring existence in a more detailed fashion. So we're all alive, and that's our commonality, and that alone, and we just keep getting proliferating people, but we don't have this expanding world, so we need to bring in some kind of order to make this manageable. He continues, and a tyranny does just that, structures your life for you. It does this as meticulously as possible, certainly far better than a democracy does. Also, it does it for your own sake, for any display of individualism in a crowd may be harmful, first of all to the person who displays it, but one should care about those next to him as well. So life, the tyranny actually helps structure your life better than a democracy does. This would appear to be a criticism of democracy, though I don't think it is. I think he's saying that, yes, democracy does not structure your life, and maybe that's good. Maybe we need less structure in our lives. The tyranny is going to structure it for you. And the dream, the ultimate goal, as he says here, the dream is to make every man his own bureaucrat. So everyone becomes in charge of their own little kind of job, their own little province that they can look over and lord over and, stamp or give permission for something. And everyone is managing themselves. So this is the unsettling picture that Brodsky gives. So tyranny is not the product of just one type of government over another, but he's saying that this is going to exist in all forms. It's going to rise out of the parties, the political parties, and is there really to try to help manage people's lives in an overpopulated world. And I think if we apply this to the American context, you can see that pretty much up until maybe 2016, in both parties, whether it was Democrat or Republican, you're basically getting the resurrection of the same leaders over and over again, and they're just pushing the party lines. I say up until 2016. I think one of the reasons, whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump, one of the reasons why he's so disruptive is he wasn't just the resurrection of George W. Bush, the previous president on the Republican side, but he actually kind of overthrew that party first before he went on to kind of disrupt, say, the nation. And again, I don't use disrupt as a negative or a positive. I'll leave that to you to take sides. So it's a thought-provoking essay, and like many of the essays in here. And so lots of wisdom that can be found in Brodsky, and I quite enjoy his fierce individualism that he promotes in all his work. All right, thanks for listening.